Hi, this is Pamela Worth with the Hello Health Moms Empowered podcast. Today I have Dr. V, and he is a groundbreaking root cause doctor when it comes to headaches, as well as adrenals, as well as so many other things. So, welcome, doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a fun subject of mine. And in fact, I just developed a prenatal vitamin. So here we go, huh?
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful.
Mhm.
So many of my friends are plagued by headaches. So, tell us a little bit about how you got into this and how you work with people that are really going through these chronic headache symptoms.
Right, sure. Like most of us, it was personal experience, right? And my personal suffering back in my teens, I had headaches. They were the whole head. Now I would call it headband headache. They would pound every time I did bench press, and if I try to work through it, it would just last longer and longer. And all the over-the-counter so-called solutions did not offer me any help. Went the medical model. My loving parents took me to a general practitioner, said, "Oh, you might have an aneurysm." Absolutely don't work out, and it did the typical freak out thing. And they said, after a CAT scan and dye and all that yucky stuff, they said, "Well, you don't have an aneurysm, so go see a psychiatrist." So, thanks for nothing. Ultimately, I ended up having those headaches while I was working out, and chiropractic intern actually at the gym said, let's try this," and gave me an adjustment, and it kind of changed my life. My headaches went away at that point, and I now understand that those were what I would call a large intestine headache or a headband type of a headache. So it was some colon or digestive issues that were causing that. So now, in my the Headache Advantage book, I lay out, those food triggers that would affect or typically cause, like wheat or dairy or corn, that would potentially disrupt colon function and set the stage for that whole headache. And ultimately, as I got into healthcare and as a healthcare practitioner, in this approach called applied kinesiology, that gave me the tools to identify, through muscle organ correlations and pain patterns and things. Every time somebody come in with a headache, I'd ask, well, where's it located? Where's that pain? And the challenge for many docs or people that aren't using this approach is virtually all headaches are referred pain. So it's not a neurologic problem, which is a relief, that it's not your brain, it's not an aneurysm, right? But it's referred pain from the stomach, or it's referred pain from the gallbladder that is causing and setting the stage for that headache. And so that then empowers us, because once we understand what the organ trigger is, then we can look at the food triggers. Gallbladder often is compromised by glyphosate, or the pesticide in Roundup found in wheat, corn, and soy. That's going to cause a right-sided headache. So when we understand these triggers, then it empowers us as health pursuers to know what to do and where to look to get the resolution uh, naturally.
Well, I think that's fascinating. And I think so many people are told that it's hormonal. So, how do you know the difference between a hormonal headache and something that is potentially being triggered through one of the organs?
100%. Let's lean into that for this audience, right?
Yeah.
Any ladies listening to this headache or to this podcast? So, the hormonal headaches are what I call bitemporal. It's over both ears, relatively equal on both sides. That type of headache tends to have to do with estrogen metabolism. So that's going to be the monthly headache that comes around ovulation or comes around menstruation. So we want to look at how, in that case, typically helping the liver metabolize estrogen properly. And there's some key pathways in there, especially methylation. That one gets a lot of press lately. Methylation is very B12 dependent. So if you have that bitemporal type of a headache, comes on, once or twice a month, typically that's estrogen metabolism. So simple things like B12 will help drive that methylation pathway to break it down. Limiting sugar intake. Sugar is always going to make it worse because of its leaching of those B vitamins. But folate is the other vitamin that's going to help drive that methylation pathway. So simple solutions like that, or methionine, which is highest in beef, tuna, and eggs. So if you're strict vegan, you'll have to look at other sources potentially for that methionine, especially if they're an O blood type. They tend to be higher need of methionine. But using those vitamins, again, folate, B12, potentially methionine to drive that pathway, then we can break down the estrogen and again get to the cause. The beautiful thing there is correcting that is going to stop the potential progression of things like cancer, because cancer, that methylation pathway activates the tumor suppressor gene. So when that's not functioning right, then we lose our ability to kill those cancer cells when they're being formed. So that's really kind of the big wow of like, hey, it's okay, it's a headache and it's an impediment to our joy in life, but it's really our body. And that's why the book is called The Headache Advantage, is because these headaches really tell us the priority, helps us understand, hey, warning light on the dash, your engine's about to blow. That head pain is telling us in the bitemporal headache, telling you estrogen's not metabolizing well. If we don't correct this, there could be some significant long-term consequences. So,
No,
mhm.
that's wild. How do you kind of go about mapping? How do you know, or when people come to you and want to work with you, kind of walk us through kind of the process that you would take someone through when they're um, suffering like
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And again, that's why I call it the headache advantage, because we want to take advantage of what the pain is, what the body's trying to tell us. So, like most doctor visits, it starts with a consultation. Well, they fill out the paperwork and check off where they hurt and how it's affecting their life and so on. I use that information to then ask questions about where is your pain. Every organ has this, every muscle has associated glands or organs with it. And so if they have physical pain in the glute medius, the muscle on the top of the butt muscles there, if you will, that muscle is going to get weak, for example, and painful, like sciatic upper level or upper end of the sciatic pattern, that muscle gets weak and painful when estrogen is not metabolizing well. So they could have pain in the glute and pain on the outside of the elbows, an acupuncture point associated with hormones. So if they have that, and then they have there's the glute and the elbow, and then they have that bitemporal headache, I know first place we need to start is estrogen metabolism for that person. So then we'll look at supplements, we'll look at foods that are going to make it worse. Are they eating too much sugar? Are they eating too much corn? Are they deficient in these vitamins to metabolize it? So it starts with where does it hurt? What can we do about it? What are the correlations between these areas of pain? We do some basic exam, blood pressure and that normal stuff, and then the muscle testing. I used to do a lot of lab testing, and I enjoy labs and look at them. But realistically, through muscle testing and pain patterns, acupuncture, meridian organ associations, I can know within, in a matter of minutes, evaluating and typically understand, hey, this food is the trigger, or, this nutrient deficiency is what's causing it. We can give an adjustment or, an emotional correction, if you will, and they'll feel better there. But acupuncture, chiropractic, that sort of stuff is great. And but unfortunately, sorry, if you're people listening are a chiropractor, it's somewhat temporary unless we get to the nutritional, or nutritional deficiency or the food triggers. That's where the lasting permanent changes come from. Mhm.
and how do you kind of monitor or test food or vitamin deficiencies? Is it done through the muscle mapping, or is it done through a different way? Or
Yeah, so I do it all through muscle testing.
yeah.
There are labs that can do it. It's going to cost, more and take more time and so on. Again, using that glute medius muscle, the muscle that's kind of just below the belt line there, that muscle will be weak and tender. It will literally be tender to the touch. If I put the sugar, if you will, if that's a trigger, put that on the tongue, that muscle's going to hurt more. Incidentally, energy goes from the right side and exits from the left. And so I can actually use the hand, even I can put that sugar in the left hand. That's basically asking the body, if Pamela never ate sugar again, how much better is estrogen metabolism? And that muscle will literally dissolve, that the tenderness, the pain in that muscle will go away. Or if it's the elbow pain that hurts, you put the sugar in this case in the left hand. If that's the cause, that'll tell us exactly how much of the symptom is caused by sugar. So it gives us an immediate input into how the body's functioning or dysfunctioning. Mhm.
Fascinating. What about detox? Do you find that any of that is necessary, that maybe, kind of back to methylation, people might not be metabolizing correctly? Is there a way to kind of help pull some of those toxins out faster or differently, or is it just
Right.
more time to through the methylation process to work through some of that?
Yeah, fantastic question. And I mean, methylation is a perfect example. Methylation is the primary pathway in the liver that gets rid of toxic metals. And unfortunately, we're always exposed to toxic metals. So yes, it starts with limit the exposure, right? I mean, it's kind of like if you do a colonic and go to McDonald's on the way home, what good did you do, right? So get rid of the offenders if as best you can. Try to clean up our environment, whether that means cleaning the air, with purifiers or your water. Foods, obviously, foods are very corrupt, unfortunately, for the most part. We're hoping a lot of that changes with changes in the world about us. Um, so we want to reduce the exposures, but then yeah, there's supplements again, B12, folate, that sort of stuff, to help drive those pathways. Um, I do a smoothie every day. Yeah, incidentally, organic vegetables, the minerals and that sort of stuff are going to help us detoxify. Minerals, mineral deficiency makes us more toxic metal sensitive. And so if we can limit the toxic metals and bolster our minerals so that there's not as much opportunity for those toxic metals to bind up, then we can kind of instill some damage control, if you will. So I do an organic, put a bunch of organic vegetables and, filtered water and some protein and some good fats in a smoothie that I drink every day. In that, my protein, one of the sources of protein is a detox-oriented protein, so that I make sure I have the nutrients to drive those detox pathways. Yes, there's, the overnight kind of detox, the, Epsom salt cleanse and all that. And there's, we have all kinds of detox powders. Again, get to the source as best you can. If you're working in an oil refinery, you're gonna have to push those detox pathways a whole lot more, or if you're slathering, sorry, ladies, but perfumes or something, have a lot of toxins in them, or a lot of the lotions, unfortunately, a lot of the anti-aging lotions have estrogen modulating chemicals in there. So it could be, I mean, I had a gal that had headaches for 25 years. It was because of the same perfume she wore every single day. We figured that out, and she never had another headache for, the following 10 years. So, I mean, that's how simple it can be when we use the tools. And outside of being in my office, I empower people to log if you have to, write down, hey, this is the perfume I used today, this is what I ate, oops, I had a headache. And log is hopefully going to help bring to the surface the things that you're doing in the life that is bringing those up.
Do you have any favorite lotions that you recommend that are less problematic than others? Or
Right. Yeah. um, the other side of that is, unfortunately, I'm not a fan of coconut. I know Dr. Google says it's, the holy grail. I do like saturated fats. I use ghee for myself typically. I even rub that on my skin periodically. The closer to, God made, the better, I would say. I don't have any favorite brands off the cuff. I mean, I have ladies bring them in all the time to test and see which ones work for them and which ones don't. But in general, the fewer petroleum-based products in there, the better. The closer to, plant or, organic based is the better.
that makes
Mhm.
sense. Talk to us about the mind-body connection.
Yes. Okay. The body stores emotions, and the more minerally deficient we are, the more sensitive we would be to those emotions. Exercise helps us collect our thoughts and organize and desensitize, if you will, to some of that. And having the minerals will help us to be more rock-like, so that those toxic emotions can reflect off instead of being stuffed away. When we're eating sugar, when we're nutrient deficient, then we're going to be more prone to physically store and harbor those emotions, and then they have physical consequences. That's a lot of the challenge with chronic illness. If somebody's had this deficiency, this problem for 10, 20 years, and every time some aberrant event happens, it's going to get stuffed away on top of it. And so we have to work harder to clear those emotional triggers over time. Every organ has associated emotions with that. We were talking about estrogen metabolism that's muddled. So that's the hormone, the endocrine system, that's muddled, instability, frightfully overjoyed, paranoid, emotions like that. They can get stuffed away in the ovaries, if you will. If the ovary is already compromised, then you can be more prone to store those. We may need to release them. there's ways naturally to do that with, using acupuncture points and literally, I mean, if you're getting adjusted or going to the acupuncturist and you know that, ever since, you found this dirt on your spouse or, you got laid off, if you know that you've had a headache ever since then, ponder that event as you get adjusted, ponder that event as you're getting your acupuncture or you're getting your massage. I mean, massage therapists see it often, right? As they're massaging, say that glute medius, and all of a sudden the person will start crying for, whoa, what happened here, right? That's great. That's a release of those emo tears are therapeutic. Let them rip. Mhm.
No, it's fascinating.
Mhm.
Um, what about, I mean, is there, and you kind of touched on this too, the trigger points for wellness with your emotions. I mean, obviously you talk a lot about the gluteus. Is there any other part of the body that really, as you're kind of thinking about where to keep those emotions kind of in balance or anything um, around organs and the pain and anything else that is kind of a secret sauce, if you will?
Well, for this audience, thyroid is a big subject. We probably can just table that for the next podcast. But thyroid, low functioning thyroid is going to be weepiness, tears, that sort of thing. Physically, it manifests as a suboccipital or what they call a tension headache. And so, if the thyroid's under functioning, then that's going to dramatically affect fertility because of its regulation on hormones. So, if the thyroid is on the low end of norm from a lab perspective, I would say anything less than on a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, that's less than 2. The medically accepted norm is 0.35. Is still considered okay, but that's under functioning thyroid, and you can be more prone to the emotional yo-yos and the tension headaches. So in that case, we'd want to bolster that, look at nutrients to help it. The scalene muscles, as far as the physical areas you'd asked about, the muscles in the front of the neck that support that often get compromised in a whiplash type of a trauma, those are, and they affect the sinuses, those get compromised physically when the thyroid's not functioning as well. But the blanket answer to your question, every single organ has, or every single muscle has an associated gland or organ that then has specific emotions to that gland or organ. Mhm.
Yeah. When you mentioned that you created a prenatal vitamin, tell us a little bit about how that's different than some of the other ones that people may be taking.
Yeah, and hot subject of mine, just because we had some infertility I mean, after our first child, we had a miscarriage and that, which you know, forced me to dive into it, and turned out my wife had a thyroid issue that I corrected. 2 weeks later, the numbers were good, and so then the midwife was sending all her fertility cases to us and to me. So got into it. The prenatal that I put together has a very active form of folate. We need that folate because typically a lot of the neurologic development is the weeks before a person, a gal, even knows that she's pregnant. So really want to start that prenatal, I'd say typically a couple months before you're officially going to start trying, so that we have those pathways supported. Prenatally, we want to potentially try to get some toxic metals out before fertility, because toxic metals like fluoride, unfortunately, and things like that can compromise the genetic potential of the child. Um, so we want to try to clean the system up prior to getting knocked up. So in the supplement, again, is folate. It has a lot of the more active forms of the B vitamins, and things to make sure that the pregnancy goes well. I've used many over the years, and just really excited about the way this one's testing and working for people.
And I think that's a really important piece to touch on. Tell us from your doctor eyes the difference between a methylfolate and a folic acid and why it's so important to take a methylfolate versus a folic acid. Because I think
Okay.
so many people, including myself, had been, given these high folic acid prenatal vitamins.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, it turns out I have MTHFR. I only found out that years later, and I really never should have been given a bunch of folic acid. I should have been given methylfolate. So maybe
Right.
touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, and so B12 comes in along with it to help drive and facilitate that methylation. Is the MTHFR gene is the most common deficiency, most common compromise in the genetic pool, if you will. Interesting how when that whole folic acid conundrum had kind of hit the press years ago, ultimately, give you the cliff notes in the beginning. Um, if many people have compromised into methylation, and so if they're taking a folic acid supplement, which is going to be a lot of your over-the-counter B vitamins, they put the kind of the easy, cheap form of the folic acid in there. That's going to actually stress that pathway further and create damage and create problems. Whereas if you use the proper form of a methylated folate, then it's going to metabolize and facilitate and turn on that gene to function properly. We call that epigenetics, which means then, from a fertility perspective, then we have a healthier, more vibrant child. So the glitch there and the kind of thing I'm trying to get out to people as far as that MTHFR gene, a friend of mine, a colleague that does a lot of the gene testing, had a child that showed up that had the what they call homozygous MTHFR gene, meaning in the gene world, that means that both mom and dad had a glitch in the MTHFR gene, and he had the opportunity to then test mom and dad, and neither mom nor dad had the MTHFR gene, which is that whole mind blow, what's going on here. It kind of corrupts the whole understanding. So what he eventually figured out was retroviruses. The most popular currently was COVID, was a retrovirus. These retroviruses kind of inhibit or cause this gene compromise that way. So then to look deeper in or kind of pull back the veil, we want to look at what we can do to support the system against these retroviruses and whatever weaker gland or organ that allowed that virus to flourish, whether it's lungs or thyroid or liver or spleen. We want to support that gland or organ to then give the body what it needs to kill that virus and get rid of that virus, so that then the genes can function properly. Then we don't transfer those genes down to the next generation.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fascinating. Uh, Anything else we have not touched on that you want to touch on? I feel like there's a million things, but really top of mind that you really want to make sure we get out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's listen to the body. I mean, the pain is an indicator that something's not functioning right. And my theme, my tagline is pain is intended to elicit change. So use that pain, be inspired by your pain instead of being taken down or, labeled or identified by the pain that you're having. Unfortunately, you may have to doctor shop. You may have to go to several people or, listen to more podcasts like this to understand and figure out what the source is. But the answer is out there. So learn from your pain, whatever that pain is, whether it's a headache, whether it's jaw pain or a muscle ache or fibromyalgia, which just means you need somebody skilled to understand what the patterns of fibromyalgia are, whether it's a blood sugar problem or a thyroid problem. Learn from that pain, be inspired by it instead of taken down and compromised from it.
What if people want to work with you? Are you solely in person? Do you also work with people remotely? Tell us a little bit about how people can find you.
Great, thank you. Yes, well, the last name is Vrzal, V as in Victor, Rzal. So you can spell that. You can find me on social media, places like that. Please pick up the book, and that's kind of the resource to get the information out there. Personally, my office is in Southern California, Laguna Niguel. We have a few other doctors that do the same work as well, and we do remote visits. COVID brought that all out. I used to just do it for family, and some of the colleagues doctors that I coach were in areas that got shut down. And so I started teaching how to do virtual visits as well, which is fascinating that it's still as effective and we can make pain go away treating through Zoom. So yes, it can be done. You get my office in Laguna Niguel.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor. We really appreciate it. And I'll be sure to add all of your contact information in the show notes as well.
Thank you. The Headache Advantage is great. Check that out. It's a good read. I'd appreciate, I covet your, what do you call them? Reviews,
Absolutely.
reviews on the book. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Pamela.